talk about. I want to give those of you attending kind of a sense of what are the employment opportunities in the bioscience area. Now, of course, I'm based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so a lot of the next few slides are kind of San Francisco Bay Area focused. But the general argument is when you think about biotech companies, they're throughout the world. Other kinds of research entities are also throughout the world. So even though my slides are kind of San Francisco Bay Area focused, please do understand I'm not specifically necessarily talking about companies or research entities here in the Bay Area, but companies in research Bay Areas globally. So fortunately here in the Bay Area, we have lots of different biopharmaceutical companies. And this is a slide that's been produced a number of years ago, quite famous, that highlights a number of these companies in the Bay Area. So, but I do want you to understand when you're looking for jobs in the biosciences, you don't have to look exclusively in the biotech and biopharmaceutical area. You can look at other areas. And we're also here in the Bay Area having a large number of research universities. University of California has 4 major campuses here in the Bay Area. And then we have 2 state universities, San Jose and San Francisco State, and of course, Stanford University. So all of these laboratories are intensely involved in bioscience research. So there's obviously significant job opportunities here, beyond the biopharmaceutical biotech industries. So academic credentials for biotech, as well as the research happening in the bioscience field at the university level, runs the gamut from bachelor's degree all the way up to some sort of doctoral degree, depending on the position that's open. So certainly for individuals who are more interested in the lab, so master's, PhDs, certainly some lab experience will be important. Lab experience to a lesser extent for Bachelor of Science kinds of positions. Knowledge of molecular biology, recombinant DNA technology, biochemistry, certainly, some knowledge, maybe gene therapy, gene editing will be helpful. But what's really become apparent to me in the last couple of years, and I think this is going to be, key going forward to be successful in finding employment in the biopharmaceutical as well as in the university environment, is to have some experience in coding or artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence and machine learning has become so significant and will continue to grow. I think people with biology or biomedical backgrounds will be more successful in obtaining jobs in academia, in the biopharmaceutical industry, if they also have a little bit of background in coding and artificial intelligence. Because, I mean, this can really be, artificial intelligence, machine learning can be absolutely key and will become more so in the bio research environment, as well as in the biopharmaceutical environment going forward. So certainly for positions that require people management, probably Ph.D., M.D. Positions will be relevant. People for these positions will certainly have to have, cultural intelligence skills, as well as excellent oral and written communication skills. So I just also want to point out that there are other bioscience entities, research entities globally as well. So there's a number of institutions that are private institutions that do bioscience research. Here's just 3 here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We also have several government laboratories. There's in Bay Area, there's the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. We tend to think of this as involved in high energy research, nuclear research, but they also have a very significant bioscience research division. NASA Ames Research Center down in Santa Clara County. You kind of think of, at least I think when I think of NASA, I think of spaceships and rockets and astronauts and that kind of thing. But they actually have a very significant bioscience research effort as well. And a couple of years ago, I had one of my virology students who actually applied to and was accepted for a job at NASA Ames to actually develop experiments with bacteria that were intended to be conducted in the International Space Station. So who would have ever guessed? I mean, I totally was astonished that they even did this kind of research, but they do have bioscience research as well. So again, another opportunity for you to think beyond the biopharmaceutical biotech community if you're interested in jobs in the bioscience area. On the clinical side, many pharma companies, have to have people involved in clinical research to test the drugs in clinical trials, to run the clinical trials, to do the data analyses and so forth. So many companies have their own clinical departments to do that kind of research, but some companies don't. And so there are a lot of global contract research organizations, CROs for short, that really support the global biopharmaceutical industry, especially in the clinical area. The undertaking of those clinical studies as a service for a fee. So this is another area that hire basically the same kinds of clinical scientists that pharmaceutical companies would have to manage, run, and analyze their clinical trials that are really, are absolutely critical for regulatory approval. So also something to keep in mind is another opportunity for employment in the bioscience area. So the last thing I want to chat with you about, and this really comes from my perspective of being the hiring manager in a number of biopharmaceutical companies pretty much throughout my career. So there are really two key questions I think you need to ask yourself if you're interested in a job in the biopharmaceutical industry. And likewise, if that bioscience is in academia, private research, or biotech, biopharmaceutical, it's the same question. What job do I want? There's so many different jobs in the biosciences. Even if you just focus on the biopharmaceutical industry, dozens of different jobs involved in both the non-clinical as well as the clinical aspects of drug discovery and development. So over the years, I've had students at the beginning of my courses, my drug discovery development course, my virology course, will come to me and ask me, well, Dr. Rozhon, can you give me some guidance in terms of how to get a job in biotech? And so my first question is, well, what job do you want? And often the response I get is, well, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about that. So one of the things I tell my students, take the course, finish the course, during which we talk about, at least the drug discovery development course, a lot of what those jobs are, what their functions are, and so forth. And then come back to me at the end of my course and then tell me what job you want. And then I could give you, hopefully, some germane advice on how to get that job. So first question is, what job do I want? Second question I have to ask is, am I qualified to do this job? And if you're able to, honestly assess your qualifications and feel that you're ready, you are qualified, then maybe you're ready to submit an application for that open position. If the answer is no, then you really need to sit down and think carefully to develop a strategy as to how to attain the job. So in the sense you're here, this is your qualifications now, but you want to be here to get that job. So what do I need to do to go from here to here? So that's what that strategy is. So I think in my mind, in my perspective, I think your strategy should comprise sort of, multiple activities and efforts that are intended to, one, enhance your qualifications for the job you want, and then to increase your chances of obtaining a job offer. So I've divided this my advice really into two parts. So enhance your qualifications, increase chances of job offer. So one may be, you really need to increase your knowledge base of a given area. So this would probably represent further academic training. So might represent on the job training at, a related, but maybe lower job than what you want. But certainly you're going to have to increase your knowledge base for the job you want. So that might also mean, beyond taking classes in a given area, taking a a less desirable, and maybe that's not the best word, taking a lower level job that really is a stepping stone to the higher level job that you want. So basically that provides you the opportunity to, gain more knowledge, gain more hands-on experience, learn the language, learn the culture associated with that job, and, put you in a better position for qualifications. Sometimes you can find internships in different companies that maybe can afford you the same kind of opportunity. Increase the chances of job offers. So I can't underestimate networking. So networking is always a challenge. How do you network? How do you go out and meet people who, have the jobs you want, who, might be willing to hire you? So bottom line is there several things you can do to network successfully. One is to do informational interviews. So if you can identify individuals who have the job you want, maybe in the company you want, you could contact those individuals and ask them if they would do an informational interview. So I found over the years that many people in the biosciences, wherever they are, companies, academia, are willing to do that. Some of them sort of feel an obligation to do that. It's not true that all will, but many will. So your job is to identify those individuals and contact them. How do you do that? So, if you're interested in a particular kind of job in a particular area, say it's in a laboratory position, biotech, academia, private research institute, whatever, most of these people will publish. So you could spend some time in the medical library or science library, look at the journals of your area of interest, find out who are the individuals working in this area, publishing in this area. Journal articles always have contact information on the authors, so zap them an email. You can also call up the HR, human resources department in different companies that are of interest to you or institutions. Basically explain to them you're trying to identify somebody for an informational interview. They'll often have a list of their employees who are willing to do that. Always participate in career fairs or job fairs when they become available. And obviously, these have been kind of few of these, if any, in person because of the pandemic, but these are beginning to pick up again. I've seen some advertisement for job fairs, so keep your eyes open for that and sign up for them. They're free and they're certainly worthwhile attending, and it's a great networking opportunity. Another thing that some prospective job seekers don't think about, is attending the local affiliate meetings of national professional organizations. So pretty much, when you talk about the sciences, either the non-clinical or the clinical sciences, there are a variety of different scientific groups, organizations who work in these, people who work in these areas, and many of the national organizations have local affiliate groups. So here in the Bay Area, we have dozens of these local affiliate meetings in both non-clinical professional areas and clinical professional areas on a monthly basis. So you can, pay the fee to go to dinner and hear a talk, meet with people, network with people. Sometimes people who attend these are the hiring managers. So, I go to some of these meetings myself. I've been a hiring manager, so I've actually ended up meeting people at these meetings that I have hired. So it is a real opportunity that should not be missed in terms of enhancing your networking contacts. The job application itself. Be sure your resume is job specific to the company or the entity specific. So, I've seen my students in the past who will be interested in several different jobs, and they'll just simply send one resume to the the website that hires, that's posting all those different kinds of jobs. So the problem is you need to ensure that in the first few lines of your resume that it's specific to the job that you're applying for. So it can't be a general sort of resume that might be applicable to multiples. You've got to ensure that your resume is specific to the job that you want. So what that might mean is that if you're applying to different jobs based on internet postings or advertisements somewhere, you need to have multiple resumes that are specific to that job. So likewise, it's really important you learn as much as possible about the culture of the company you're interested in or the academic or research institution to which you're going to apply. If a company has marketed products, familiarize yourself with those products. The last job I had before I retired from the biopharmaceutical industry was at Genentech here in the Bay Area. And during my first interview, I was asked a question, what my impression was of two of Genentech's monoclonal antibody drugs. So you have to do your homework and really be prepared to know as much about that company as you can to be successful in that interview. So in your resume, articulate your experiences as precisely as possible. Avoid trite language. Ensure your resume is concise, no grammatical or spelling errors. If you're not practiced in resume writing, it might be a good idea to seek the advice from a professional on this. And then if you're lucky enough to get that interview, whether it's telephone or in person, actively prepare for it. Review common interview questions that you'll get that easily available on the internet. Practice giving concise and credible responses to those questions with a friend or a spouse or a significant other. But really important to spend quite a bit of time to prepare for a successful interview. And I think with that, Monica, I will stop. So thank you all very much for your attention. I know we covered a lot of ground, and I know some of it was fairly technical, but hopefully you weren't overwhelmed. But I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, Edward. That was a wonderful presentation. We did have a few questions that came in. So some of these are from the earlier part of the lecture, and one is it possible to reduce the number of years and or cost to produce a drug? And what are some possible ways to speed up the process?
Yeah. Well, I guess the answer is probably yes, there are ways. I mean, it's really a reason that companies are employing artificial intelligence and machine learning. So they're really trying to speed up the decision-making process. They're trying to ensure they make the right decisions when advancing a drug through the development pathway. So I think the answer is yes, that it is possible. But what's kind of interesting is, based on my almost 30-year career in the biopharmaceutical industry, what I've seen is that as new technologies come about, we employ those technologies in drug discovery and development, but I'm not sure it makes the drug discovery and development, the research and development process less expensive or faster. But I do think that with the advance of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we probably can employ those technologies to the drug discovery and development process that theoretically can make the process of drug discovery and development happen more quickly. But I'm not sure that it will be less costly. The other thing that happens that I think has prohibited us from doing drug development research more quickly has been the fact that regulatory authorities like the FDA tend to actually increase the number of regulations. So, when regulations come about, they carry the force of law, and pharmaceutical companies have to satisfy those regulations. But to answer your question, is it possible? Yeah. Am I optimistic that it will happen more quickly and less costly? I guess, to be honest with you, I'm not so optimistic that will happen, but could be wrong. Maybe in that case, I hope to be wrong, but time will tell.
Thank you. What are the reasons for 90% of drugs at phase 1 fail to go to market?
Yeah. Really good question. So it's probably multiple, but I guess what I would say is that um, when we identify a target for the development of our drug program, I don't think scientists who study this, pharmaceutical scientists who study this, can prove it, but they kind of feel a gut instinct is that companies have started off their drug discovery program and not developed the right target, not identified the right target. So they developed a drug that will hit the target they want, but that drug doesn't seem to have a significant role in the development of the disease. So, for example, if you think about Alzheimer's disease, it's been around, it's been known for almost 100 years. So there have been dozens and dozens of pharmaceutical companies basically embark on drug discovery and development programs to bring a drug forth that will really have a significant impact in slowing the cognitive decline of patients with Alzheimer's. But for the most part, these companies have not had much success. I mean, most recently in the last week, there has been a new drug approved by the FDA for Alzheimer's, but it probably has a marginal that one of their phase three trials worked, their other phase three trials did not work. Very controversial. You can read up on it. But I would say target identification is one problem. The other problem is pharmacokinetics. So a drug might look good in cell culture systems or in the test tube, but when it comes to administering it to a human and that drug getting to the place in a human where it can impact the disease or inside the cells where it can impact the disease, the drug just simply isn't able to do that. So pharmacokinetics is, another reason. Potency, the drug is not strong enough to produce the desirable effect, doesn't produce a statistically significant effect against placebos or whatever the test control is. So I could go on and on actually about what are the explanations for drugs that don't make it, because I've been involved in many of those myself. So I've had a few drugs that have made it to FDA approval in my career, but I've also had many, many more drugs that did not make it. So the bottom line is when a pharmaceutical company starts out to discover and develop a new drug to treat a particular disease, the probability of that company being successful is really, really low. And so really that's the nature of the game in terms of developing drugs. In the end, as I mentioned, the drugs have to be effective. So in other words, they have to produce a statistically significant response compared to a control group of patients. And the benefit of taking that drug has to outweigh the risk. So in other words, the drug might have some significant benefit, but if the side effects or the toxicity of the drug is so significant, nobody's going to want to take that drug. And certainly FDA is not likely to approve it.
Mhm, mhm. Um, Thank you so much. So there's another question from Brian. He's asking any changes in the future for drug safety that you see coming?
Uh, well, I guess I'd have to ask Brian what he's thinking about there. But uh, you know, if you look at the safety statistics on drugs, say in the last since 2000. So one of the telling results is that only about 5% of the drugs that are ultimately approved by the FDA have to be withdrawn from the market for safety reasons. So what that says is basically 95% of the drugs then that are approved by the FDA in the last 20, 21 years or so are still on the market. So what that means is that the safety of that drug is, or those drugs, is such that the benefit of taking the drug still outweighs the risk. So, but like anything else, as science and technology advances, it's certainly likely that we may be able to develop drugs that have improved safety profiles. So there's no question that probably the drugs approved today are safer than the drugs that were approved 30, 40 years ago. So I think that will continue. But the point is I don't think for the most part, the fact that 95% of the drugs that have been approved by the FDA in the last 2 decades are still on the market means the benefit still outweighs the risk. But can we do better in improving, diminishing even the side effects of drugs that we have? People are still working toward that. And I think there's high hopes as technology advances that we'll be able to bring, be able to continue to bring drugs to market that will have safer and safer profiles. But you do have to understand that drugs are foreign entities, except for hormone replacement kinds of drugs, those kinds of things. So they are foreign entities, and basically all drugs have some side effects. It can be, very much dose dependent. But at this point, all drugs have side effects. So will we ever be able to get to the place of developing a drug that has no side effects? I don't know. Probably not, would be my guess.
Couple more questions, and I think we'll probably give it another 5-10 minutes, and then we'll
Okay, that's
wrap up
fine.
here. So in AI and machine learning, you mentioned that's also being used in clinical stage, and can you provide some example use cases of where that would apply?
I have a slide in my appendix. I brought that in just in case I was answered that question. So this is actually a slide I developed for my course. And basically, artificial intelligence, machine learning has been used across the drug discovery and development platform. So from target identification to actual validation of the target to discovery of drugs for that target, the process of screening those drug candidates to choose the best one to move into clinical studies, as well as making certain decisions about the efficacy and safety profile of a drug in clinical trials. So it's been used in basically all aspects. Artificial intelligence, machine learning has basically been used in all aspects of drug discovery and development with some degree of success or another. The question is there room for improvement? And the answer is yes, across all areas. So I do think that artificial intelligence and machine learning to some extent is still in its infancy in terms of its utilization within the biopharmaceutical industry. But that will change as more and more data become available to basically train the machines, train the computers in the decision-making process. So, I mean, companies are really working aggressively to enhance the machine learning environment so that those systems actually make better recommendations to support the drug discovery and development process. But to answer the question specifically, it's used in all areas as evidenced by this particular slide.
Thanks so much, Edward. And then last question here is, how is it determined for the vaccine that after trial in phase 2 study that it was safe to use? How was the data collected?
Yeah, so basically what was done is they employed a small number of patients, and I don't know the exact number, but in 100 to maybe 200 patients, and basically the patients were followed for basically the safety of the vaccine, so no significant side effects or documentation of the side effects. We know the vaccines do have some side effects, but also then what the likelihood was that the individuals who were vaccinated became infected. So as you know, with both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, that those individuals, it was showed in phase 2, that those individuals had a very high level of not becoming infected, not developing overt disease or developing antibodies to the infection. So basically, the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccines were such that the FDA allowed the companies to proceed into the larger phase 3 global studies where there were, something like 25, 30,000 patients that were followed over a period of like 3 to 4 or 5 months during the height of the pandemic to ensure that they were protected from infection, as evidenced by developing antibodies, and also were followed and documented for their side effects. So this was done by thousands of principal investigators throughout the globe in participating countries who actually would have the patients visit the clinic on a regular basis for blood tests, look at evidence of infection for antibody or viral infection, as well as to record the side effects of the vaccines. So all that data together, phase 2 allowed phase 3 to start. Process was basically the same for phase 3, but just much larger numbers of individuals across the globe. And ultimately that led to the FDA providing what we call EUA, emergency use authorization for the drug to be used. But then the more data was continued to be collected by both Pfizer and Moderna that was submitted to the FDA later. And I think the Pfizer now has full FDA approval, and I think that's also true for Moderna, but there's still data coming in on individuals from the age of 5 years to 12 years that will ultimately lead to full FDA authorization as well.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, I just should mention, if any of you are interested in looking at the effectiveness or the safety profile of the vaccines, you can actually go to the vaccine label, which is available on the internet at the FDA website. And if it's commercially available, it's also available commercially. And you could actually look up and see the vaccine label data that FDA relied on that led to the approval of these vaccines for public use.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much, Edward. This was a great presentation. Thank you so much. And for everyone, I know that we were supposed to end at about 3. It's about 3:30. So thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions, I put our email address in the chat. And so feel free to send us any questions later on. And I've also linked some courses that are coming up that Edward's teaching this summer and fall. So take a look for those, and also check our events page for future events and lectures related and in unrelated fields. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And Edward, thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.